Darkness unbound. Into the shadows deep clouds were gathering above the city, bringing in early darkness above the crude constructs of concrete and steel. Like harbingers of doom, they crawled, bringing omens of death and devastation with them. Damien and Lisa were sitting in their car, which was parked on a long and lonely street in the suburbs. Their eyes were fixed, yet anxious. As the wind was picking up speed, they didn't even notice pieces of garbage from the street passing by their car. The first drop of rain fell onto the windshield of the old car, but only Lisa noticed the noise. Damien's stare was fixated on the house not far from them, across the street. She squeezed his hand, and he felt the shaking. "We've got to do this." Damien's voice didn't comfort her at all. The shaking did not stop or slow down. He looked at Lisa. His stare was grave but resolute. She looked back at him with the admiration of a schoolgirl going out for the first time with her much older crush. One thing Lisa was sure about: she would follow Damien even into the depths of hell. "I know, but are you sure this is the right thing to do?" Lisa pleaded with her eyes. She secretly hoped for Damien to abort his plan, but knew he would not. He placed his sweaty hand on her cold cheek and caressed her velvet skin. "Look, these people have more than they deserve. We get in, take the money we can lay our hands on, then get out. Nobody will ever know anything. Do you trust me?" "Yes, of course. But since when it is a crime to win the lottery?" Damien sighed, then turned his gaze back at the house, which was being covered by darkness. The rain was picking up some speed, too. Now, it sounded like a tired machine gun on the windshield and roof of the car. "Look at us, Lisa. We are working our asses off every day, and we are getting nowhere. And these assholes just get crazy rich overnight. Where is the justice in that?" She avoided his eyes and kept staring at the dashboard. In reality, Lisa was lost deep in her thoughts. She felt his stringent eyes locked on her, but she didn't look back. "There is no justice," she murmured. "Yes. Now the situation is even worse. Those greedy bastards fired me, and you are pregnant." Damien touched her belly, which was just beginning to show the signs of pregnancy. "We will not raise our child in poverty, like our parents did. If it doesn't work one way, we will try another. Society had failed us more times than I can count. Now it's our time to fail its stupid rules and regulations, and take what we need. Scray everybody, we need to survive." Lisa was still lost when he grabbed her hand. The shaking subsided a bit, but its remnants were still there. Echoes of repressed fear hiding below the surface, ready to burst up again. "All right," she said, and nodded. "We go in quickly, take the money, or anything valuable, and get out." "Exactly. That's my girl. Brave, brave girl. We'll be out in no time. Just wait for the rich bastard to go to sleep." "But he doesn't live alone, does he? You said he's married," No. Yes, I saw him with a woman, but not recently. I do not know where the old hag is. Maybe she left him, or she's just traveling. One hell of a time to leave him. Yeah, I bet. Now the bastard can get all of them women. With that kind of money, he can buy anything. The house looked as if being the subject of a serious renovation project, but for some reason, the work got halted. Half-finished work was faintly visible on the outside of the house. In the driveway, they saw a brand new BMW, probably one of the latest models. Damien only dreamt about such a car. He had seen these new and fancy cars on the internet, and sometimes on television, and he was drooling every time. But he had to be satisfied with the rabbit cage on wheels, which was his car. It was enough to get around the city, but it wasn't reliable enough to be used for long drives. They haven't even watched TV for several months because it broke down, and they couldn't afford to buy a new one. The second-hand one which they had bought at a discount broke down too. The rain slowed down after an hour or so. Damien and Lisa waited in the car, but the man who had won the lottery did not leave the house. Soon enough, they noticed that someone had switched the lights in both the living room and kitchen off. "Let's hope he went to sleep," said Damien. "I doubt that. It's still early." "Yeah, but I think he is getting drunk or something. I saw his face a few times when I checked out the house, and I think he got hooked on booze. Maybe because his old lady left, I don't know." "You think he's drunk?" "Definitely. I know the face of a man who drinks a lot." "I know. Your dad." Now Lisa was the one reaching for her fiancé's hand. She was perfectly aware of the history between Damien and his alcoholic father, and also the almost bloody finale of the relationship between the two men. Even after several years, she still kept thanking God for Damien's self-control. He would have ended up in prison had he done what he had intended to do back then. We wait for another 15 minutes, and then go to the house. Take a good look around, and if everything's clear, we find a way in. Time went by fast. Just as time seems to slow down when one is desperately waiting for something, it seems to speed up when one desperately wants to avoid something. It's only a matter of perception, but it can wreak havoc on the mind. "All right, let's go." Damien looked around one more time, then exited the car. Lisa followed suit. The street appeared empty, and the rain subsided. Puddles lay all around on the cracked and uneven asphalt. Lisa looked up at the light pole close to the house they were trying to break into. It seemed to brighten for a second, then its light almost faded to nothing, just before recovering as if nothing had happened. The heavy rain must have damaged the grid, she thought, brushing off the strange event. Damien signaled her to follow him, and she did. They saw nobody outside. It was the perfect time for a robbery. Their shoes made splashing noises as they approached the silent house. A dog barked not so far away, which made Damien stop for a second, but he continued. This part of the city consisted mostly of decrepit or abandoned houses. Hobos sought these out frequently to sleep for a few nights before moving on. Some houses have been overgrown by vegetation and their roofs or walls had collapsed or crumbled. The only building in the area showing the signs of maintenance was the house Damien and Lisa planned to rob. Hedges and some trees surrounded it. It was the standard American suburban home. The owners could only afford to maintain it in a mediocre condition in the past. Now, Damien and Lisa saw in more detail the signs of ongoing renovation all over the place. Some scaffolding was placed near the walls, there were piles of wood planks, cement, and bricks covered with plastic sheets. There was also a vast pile of gravel near the driveway, and a cement mixer, which the workers had covered against the elements. They approached the house from the left. In this part, the hedges were the densest. Lisa felt a shiver go through her. She shuddered. It was not the cold, but something different. A coldness which had not only cut to her bones, but it cut all the way to her soul. Lisa looked at Damien, but he seemed to be unaffected. "I'm too afraid," she thought. "Get your act together," she whispered to herself, but it had little effect. Damien stopped her and leaned close. "Let's check the house all the way around," he said. "We have to make sure that nobody is awake. Take your time, don't rush it. We should make no sound." He pointed toward the back of the house. This meant that he will go around the front, which was riskier. People could see him from the street. He turned to go around the front, and she mustered her courage to go alone around the back. She wouldn't have done this alone. Maybe if she were to starve to death, or if her child were to starve to death. Lisa believed in her fiancé. Even though she knew it was not right to steal, the fate of her unborn child and their survival were the most important. Why is it a sin to steal from the rich when you are starving? This was the question lingering in her mind. This was what gave her some justification for what they were doing right now. The light coming from the street had a hard time reaching the back of the house. Reaching for the flashlight was tempting, but Lisa knew it was a bad idea. No flashlights, unless they were inside, and if they were absolutely necessary. Lisa paced until she reached the back door. She peered in and saw only darkness. But then, she noticed faint light coming from the basement window, which was a few feet from the back door. She went closer, careful to not make any sound, and bent on her knees to peek inside. Through the window, she saw a man sitting in a chair near the entrance, which was opposite to the window. A small table was beside him, with a candle on it. Darkness covered about half of the room, mostly the area under the window. Lisa tried to discern what was under the window, but she couldn't. The darkness was too deep for her eyes to peer into. As she kept staring, Lisa saw that the man's lips were moving, and his stare focused on something in the darkness. He was speaking to somebody, or maybe he was too drunk and already hallucinating. After some talking, he stopped and took a small rosary from the pocket of his jacket. He held it with both hands in front of him, closed his eyes, then began praying. At least, this was what Lisa concluded upon seeing the strange events. "Free me," a whisper hit her ear, and she both gasped and flinched at the same time. It was as if somebody had been standing near her, and whispered in her ear. Lisa's heart almost exploded out of her chest. After seeing that there was nobody around, she leaned against the wet wall of the house and tried to catch her breath. Every inch of her body was shaking. What happened? The question came from Damien, who completed his round around the house, and saw Lisa with her back to the wall. She gasped again when she heard him. He went close to her, but then saw the faint light in the window, and looked inside for a moment. He noticed the strange sight inside, but wanted to make sure Lisa was all right. "Let's go home, Damien," she whispered in a pleading voice as he crouched beside her and wrapped his arms around her. "But what happened? What scared you?" I thought I heard something. It was like a whisper. Like somebody whispered in my ear, but when I looked, nobody was there." "What?" "I don't know. Maybe I'm going crazy, or maybe it's the pregnancy. But it seemed so real." "Okay. All right. Calm down." She just nodded and felt a little better when Damien caressed her sweaty cheeks. "Look, we've come so far. We just have to go in and find the money." "No. Hey, the man is down there," he pointed his finger to the window. "That's good. We know where he is. I don't care what weird stuff he is doing, we just want some cash, that's all. We go in through this door, find the basement door, and barricade it with a chair. Even if he hears us, he won't be able to open the door, and we'll have time to search or run if he calls the pigs." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, of course I am. We have to do this. Now is the time." "All right. But let's hurry, please. I'm afraid." Damien just nodded, then searched for his lock-picking kit. The bottomless abyss. The door opened with little effort. Damien was a skilled lock-picker. Life on the streets had taught him many tricks. He put the kit back into his pocket, then felt for his switchblade. It was still there, in the other pocket of his pants. Of course, he knew it was there, but his unconscious mind made him do such reassuring moves. Damien and Lisa entered the kitchen. A cold draft hit both of them in the face. Lisa reached for Damien's hand. He squeezed it, but his grip quickly relaxed after sensing more in the air than just cold. It hit Lisa too, and she grimaced. It was something they have never smelled before. An amalgam of putrefaction, sulfur, burning flesh, and a festering infection. The smell seemed to come from the basement door, which was to their left. One more reason to barricade the goddamn door, thought Damien, and searched for something which he could use as a reliable barricade. He switched on his small flashlight. It was right for the job. Not too strong, but just enough to illuminate the surroundings. They didn't have to search a lot. The light soon fell onto a chair made of wood. Damien grabbed it and placed it under the doorknob. He moved with the slyness of a fox. Just as the chair's top rail touched the doorknob, a scream erupted from the basement. It was an older woman's voice. Damien jumped back with a gasp. Lisa yelped, but covered her mouth quickly. They stared at each other breathlessly and with wide eyes. They heard talking from behind the door. A man's voice, urgent but hopeless, pleaded frantically with someone, or something. What he said was not clear. Damien and Lisa backed off. Without even talking to each other, they knew they had to leave. Something more sinister had been going on here than they could have ever imagined. And they didn't want to get involved. A crying, gasping sound came from the basement. It was not a scream, but the suffering it conveyed was undeniable. "Help me!" The intruders stopped again in their tracks and listened. Lisa swallowed, but her throat was as dry as sandpaper. "Shut up, for God's sake!" shouted the man in frustration. "Nobody else is here. Who the hell are you screaming at?" "We've got to do something," Lisa whispered as her heart tried to jump out of her chest. "No, we get the hell outta here. This guy's a psycho. We can't leave her. He's torturing her. What if he has a gun? He'll kill us both." Lisa realized he was right. For a few seconds, she said nothing. She did not think about that possibility. A scream rose again from the basement, and sounds of commotion followed. It was as if the woman was struggling while being bound to a bed, but her captor was not letting her leave. The sounds being made by the bed springs were faintly audible in the kitchen. The man was shouting, the woman was pleading. Damien and Lisa looked at each other in painful hesitation. Lisa's eyes were pleading too. They were pleading to Damien to help the woman. "Shut up, devil! I will not let you out. Help me. Please. He's hurting me. Shut the fuck up." Damien uttered a long sigh, and looked at Lisa while fumbling for his knife. He found it, switched it open, then took a deep breath. The commotion was still ongoing when he removed the chair from under the doorknob and gently opened the door. He grimaced when the sulphurous smell of death hit his nose, but didn't hesitate. "Stay here. If anything happens, call the cops." "No way, I'm coming too. I can help." "All right, but keep some distance." She nodded and waited for Damien to get a few steps of head start. In the past, Damien had to face overwhelming odds many times. He had been cornered, beaten, bullied, and even robbed more times than he could remember. Frequently, however, he had won against his assailants, and against overwhelming odds. So, going down into the dark basement to face a dangerous man who might kill him was not exactly an unknown endeavor. Lisa had second thoughts as she descended the stairs, but then she saw Damien lunging upon the man. He was leaning over a bed on the other side of the room, utterly oblivious to the intruders. There was indeed a woman on a bed, but only her slim contour was visible. She was fighting against the man who was desperately trying to hold her down. The small bed had been placed right under the basement window, near the wall. Damien leaped near him in a few quick steps, and by the time the man noticed him, he was already grabbing him by his jacket. The punch that followed knocked the man with his back to the wall. He then collapsed, dazed and confused, but he did not lose his consciousness. His face was indeed that of an alcoholic. Unkempt, unshaven, and dirty. Gimlet eyes were sunken deep within their sockets, looking all around in hazy desperation. Blood was flowing from his busted nose onto his neck and clothes. He was truly looking like a hobo, in comparison with Damien's clean and young face. "Stay down. Or, I swear to God, I'll beat you to a pulp." Damien's voice was full of hate. His blood was pumping, and his eyes were fixated on the man. The woman on the bed was in a deplorable condition. Lisa rushed to her and tried to figure out how to help her. The man had bound her to the bed by her hands and feet. He used thick rope for this. The hands had been stretched back and bound to the bed's metal railing. The legs of the railing on the other side. Her body was thin, full of contusions and cuts. The nightgown she wore was torn and dirty. Lisa now knew where the smell came from. It was coming from her. Patches of blood and urine were all over the bed sheets. In some parts, feces were spread all over the sheet. Signs of splatter were visible on the walls and floor as well. How did it get there? Lisa asked herself. "No," the man whimpered. "Don't untie her." "Shut up, scumbag!" Damien shouted, and pointed a finger at him. Lisa saw her yellowish-black teeth in the light of Damien's flashlight, and also the light provided by the candle. Her face was pale and sweaty. Veins were visible on her neck. They stood out from the white of her skin. Her eyes were dark and sunken. The nails on her hands were cracked. On some of her fingers, the flesh lay exposed. It drew a strange contrast against her skin. "She's dangerous," shouted the man while he was trying to get up. "Don't be fooled by her. She's not who you think she is." Damien moved between the man and the bed. He saw a bottle of whiskey near the small table's leg. A considerable amount was missing. He put the knife back into his pocket. The man did not seem to be an overwhelming threat. "She needs help," Lisa shouted. "She's beyond help. I've tried everything. Even God had forsaken her." "What the hell are you talking about? Is she contagious or something?" shouted Damien in anger. "Just give me a minute, and I'll explain." "Don't touch her." Lisa was already reaching for the ropes which had been used to tie her hands, but she hesitated, then drew her hands back. "Don't listen to him," shouted the woman in a voice which was radically different from the anguished voices she uttered until now. See what I mean? The man pointed toward the bed, and his eyes were wide, crazed. He resembled a patient who just escaped from a mental institution and wanted to do anything in order to stay out of it. "What the hell?" asked Damien, and looked at the woman. Her face had shown anger for a moment, but then switched back to the one filled with agony. "Please free me. It hurts so much." Lisa remembered the whisper she heard when she was outside. The cadence of the voice was like the woman's. It seemed an eerie coincidence that the voice from her hallucination and a sick woman's voice might resemble each other. She looked at the man, who tried to stand, but was still leaning with his back to the wall. "Listen to me, my name is Carl, and that thing had been my wife, Aileen. I still am your wife, Carl. Please help me." Her pleas were tearing at Lisa's heart, but she felt she had to listen to Carl. "Had been?" she asked. "We've won a large sum of money." "The lottery?" "Yes, the lottery. We've planned to go around the world." After visiting various places, we had gone to Syria. We'd visited a cave. Many people had been there, with the tour guide and all. She had gotten lost somehow. "Don't listen to him, please. It hurts, please help me." "Shut your devious mouth!" Carl shouted so abruptly that he startled both Damien and Lisa. "After we've found her, she'd been a different person. Sinking into madness day after day, trying to hurt herself, refusing to eat. Lies. They are all lies," she screamed, and her face distorted. Lisa stepped back, a shiver ran up her spine. Strange things began happening in the house. Objects began moving, rustling and knocking came from the walls and floor. The smell of death, sulfur, and burning came soon after. The woman on the bed began jerking at her straps and tried to fight the ropes. In the condition she was in, it should not have been possible for her to pull with such force. The bed shook. "What the fuck?" asked Damien. "Don't you smell it? It's all around. The devil is real. It's right fucking there on that bed." His voice choked, and his last few words came out distorted. The shaking became more and more violent, and the woman started convulsing. Foam came out of her mouth. Lisa jumped to the bed. It appeared that she had forgotten everything Carl had told her just seconds ago. Her hands began fumbling with the ropes on Eileen's wrists. Carl saw this and reached for Lisa. "Don't you unstrap her!" he shouted, but Damien was fast, and punched him again. It was a harder hit. Carl slammed headfirst into the wall, then fell unconscious to the floor. Blood began to flow profusely from his temple. "Fuck it! Let's get out!" Damien shouted, but Lisa had already unstrapped one wrist, the closest one. No. "We have to help her," she said, and was already untying the other wrist. She had to lean over the woman, and the stench coming from her nauseated Lisa. "Come on. There is nothing we can do. She's gonna die, anyway." Damien shouted and reached for Lisa to grab her by the arm. This was when Aileen laughed manically and grabbed Lisa in an iron grip. She pulled her onto the bed and held her in a chokehold, and drew back with her back to the wall. Lisa screamed, but the choke quickly cut her breath short. "No. I'm going to live forever," the woman said in a distorted voice, while Lisa was trying to free her neck from the choke. It was clear now why Carl used the thick ropes to bind Aileen. But how could she muster so much strength in this weak condition? It was impossible to understand. "Let her go. The whore dies tonight," she said with an evil grimace. "If you hurt her, I'm going to kill you. Don't worry about that. I'm already dead." Damien was staring wide-eyed at her. Aileen eased on the choke, so Lisa could catch her breath. She gasped, then began to cough. "I died yesterday at 7:06 p.m., in case you are interested. This body was weak. I've had my fun with it, but now I need another one. This here," she looked down at Lisa, "is also weak. Yours, on the other hand." She just uttered a wide grin along with a serpent's stare. Her tongue slithered out of her mouth, and she licked her lips all around. It had a dark color to it, and it was cracked in several places. Her breath was visible as she stuck out her tongue. Damien felt the temperature in the room go even lower. "What the hell are you?" She fixated her stare on Damien, and her black eyes became intense. A piercing gaze, ripped from 1,000 hells, shredded through Damien's soul. "I am the mother of legions, and whomever shall survive being possessed by me will reign eternally over this wretched world. You are all slaves. Meat for the meat grinder. Nothing more than rotting flesh, guts, and blood, fit only for hatred and scorn. The depraved creation of the Almighty Lord." As she screamed the last words, she grabbed Lisa's neck and squeezed. Damien jumped to help, but the woman crushed Lisa's trachea in a single decisive move. Lisa's hands tried to grab at her own throat in order to make the airflow resume again, but without success. Her body fell onto the bed, then onto the dirty floor while still convulsing. Aileen grabbed Damien's neck, but he punched her wildly, like an enraged beast. Her grip loosened, and he tried to get a hold of Lisa to pull her out. As he bent down, he felt a blow to his head. Damien saw stars for a second or two, but it was enough for Aileen to grab him again and turn his head toward hers. She shoved her stinking tongue into his mouth. Damien retched, but couldn't vomit because something else also came from the woman's mouth. Something slimy, stinging, and tasting of rot. It slid down into his stomach while scratching and burning his esophagus. He tried to fight, but was still dazed from the blow. Whatever had gone down his throat, it released something because the room had already whirled around him. Damien fell onto his back. The thing inside him was crawling, trying to find its way somewhere. It hurt, but not for long. He started to become numb. He could still hear a thud. When he looked, Damien saw that the woman's lifeless body had fallen halfway onto the floor. The other half was still bound to the bed. Soon, Damien lost consciousness. After his mind had drifted through 1,000 fiery pits, he woke up a different man. The sun was already up, shining on an unsuspecting city. He looked around and saw 3 dead bodies. Damien smiled, then headed out. The devil was indeed real, and he was walking the earth.